tovább folytatódik a Magyar Kórusok Napja 2020-as online műsorfolyama. Én Bognár László vagyok, köszöntöm azokat, akik most kapcsolódnak be közvetítésünkbe, és azokat is ismét üdvözlöm, akik már régebb óta korábban csatlakoztak hozzánk. A következőkben folytatjuk az egy korábbi kerekasztalban megkezdett témánkat, ami pedig az, hogy a kórusok számára, a kórusokra milyen hatást gyakorolt a pandémia, hogy milyen következményei, milyen tapasztalatai vannak a mögöttünk lévő több hónapnak, majd hogy nem egy évnek. Ez alkalommal ennek a kérdésnek a külföldi aspektusait nézzük meg. Szó lesz például arról, hogy a magyar kórusok körében is oly népszerű nemzetközi fesztiválokra, versenyekre, illetve ezek szervezésére milyen kihatással van a pandémia, illetve ennek a tapasztalatai. A következő kerekasztal beszélgetés résztvevői Rachel Graves, a Brit Kórusvezetők Szövetségének, az ABCD rövidítésű szervezetnek a főtitkára, Mihela Jagodic, a Szlovén Állami Kulturális Alap kórusokért felelős osztályvezetője, valamint egy szemében a 2021-es Európa Kantát Fesztivál, Ljubljanai Európa Kantát Fesztivál programmenedzsere, végül, de nem utolsó sorban pedig Móczár Gábor, a Nemzetközi Kóruszenei Szövetség alelnöke lesz. A beszélgetést angol nyelven hallhatják, láthatják magyar feliratokkal. Give us a quick summary about the current situation in your country. So please, Rachel, about the situation of the choral scene now in Great Britain. I know there is still a lockdown in Great Britain, but the government already has some plans for the Christmas season, including choral singing.
Yes, that's right. And I should say in the UK, the rules are slightly different in the 4 nations of the UK, which makes it quite complicated for choirs. So choirs in Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland have slightly different rules to those in England, and the lockdown too is slightly different. So in England, we're just coming to the end of the second lockdown, and professionals have been able to carry on singing, and orchestral musicians have been able to perform through this lockdown, which they weren't able to do previously. But non-professionals have not been able to sing or perform. So we were, before the lockdown, quite a lot of choirs had returned to singing, and we've got quite a lot of guidelines in place that the government has set, and the choral associations in England and the UK have been able to help choirs get back. Not all choirs have chosen to do that, but quite a few have. And the situation as it stands now is that there have been guidelines set out for carol singing, and for giving carol services, and also for members of the public to be able to sing outside, to sing carols, and that hasn't happened since March. So that's quite a step forward for us. But as we're talking today, I'm still waiting for the detailed guidelines to come from the government about singing and performing more generally. But we hope that the carol singing announcement yesterday was a positive one, and we'll all be able to start singing. We're divided into tiers in England, into 3 tiers. So different regions have got different levels of restriction, and that makes potentially a difference as to what people might be allowed to do. And certainly about performing, there are no audiences allowed in the highest tiers. So if any performing will be done behind closed doors.
So at least partly carol singing will be or would be saved during the season.
Yes. Choirs will be able to sing carols indoors, no congregations or audiences, but there's more singing outside allowed. So I think everybody's quite pleased about that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Mihela, tell us about the situation in Slovenia.
Right now, we are not able to meet outside of the family circle with anybody, and even in family circle the maximum number of people that can gather is 6. So it's really strict. And for this reason, we don't expect any singing be allowed before Christmas. If there is a better situation, then maybe we get back to the stage that we were before, that it was 6 people that can gather, and in this case, maybe some vocal groups will be able to sing together. But for this year, I don't expect to be a larger group that is allowed to sing together than 6 people. It looks like. We had a much better situation in the spring, and in June we negotiated a safe singing plan with the National Institute for Health. So many choirs returned to singing in August and especially in September. We had cases with infected people in the choirs, and the ones that practiced safe singing in the distances that we decided with the National Health Institute, it worked really well, so nobody got infected. So it means that if you follow the rules, it's possible to have a safe rehearsals. But the ones that did not follow, they had a big spread of virus, so it's a big difference. And we need to keep informing people in the choirs that this is a real situation, and if they follow the rules, they will be able to singing safely when we return in a better in better conditions. And we all hope that after New Year that things will progress. They will get better slowly, especially now with all the vaccine situation, and we all hope until spring we will get back to more possibilities for choirs.
So Gábor, the IFCM has member organizations all over the world. So give us a quick overview about the situation overseas. I mean, in the USA and in Asia.
What we could see that there are 3 organizations who are in touch with IFCM: ACDA, ABCD, that is represented by Rachel, and also the European Choral Association, Europa Cantat, that started to collect general knowledge, experience from many countries and from many partners. So ACDA, perhaps it was ACDA who started to deal with this first, and they were perhaps the first ones who declared that singing is in fact infectious. And I think we have to separate, as Mihela said, the dangerousness of singing and also keeping the safety regulations, because I think these 2 things can go together, and singing can be safe if you respect the rules. Actually, what we know and what we experience in the world, that the perception of this situation may differ very strongly in different countries and different regions. Because for the moment in the United States, as far as I know, singing is completely blocked. They are struggling very much with the virus. We all know the data and the situation, and they reinforce time by time this fact by holding conferences, by organizing online meetings. They were the first ones who tried to collect the different sectors and areas. They brought together physicists, physicians, virologists, choral conductors, general practitioners, all those people who were involved in this area. And in the end, they were almost crying to say it out loud, that in fact, despite of any misleading information, it is infections, and for the safety of people, you have to respect the rules. But this is also the general impression in Asia too, because in Asia, countries are dealing with the situation also in many, many different ways. We don't know reliable information about China. What we know that China is very strictly isolating itself from the virus. So there is indeed some singing activity going on in the country, which we cannot confirm completely how is it going on for the moment. But I do know from a number of people that they just cannot enter the country, and they have to say, in case they travel there for business reasons, they have to stay for 2 weeks in quarantine, and it's taken very seriously. But what we know about Japan, in Japan there are very severe restrictions. If you go to the Pacific area, New Zealand was a very touchy case in terms of choral music, because it was the planned venue for the 12th International World Symposium on Choral Music in July. It had to be cancelled in February because we already knew that as the numbers were growing at that time, it cannot be possible. And when it had to be cancelled, and in July, there were no registered cases in New Zealand. But the rest of the world did not have the opportunity to travel there, and it had to be cancelled anyway. So now we are very happy that the next symposium on choral music will go to Qatar in the Persian Gulf at the end of 2023. So we have 3-4 years until the world gets to know to the situation, and we do hope that it will be over. So it's very colorful, and there is a huge challenge about international networks and international events, how they can be programmed, how they can be planned, how they can survive. And in fact, we had a very useful, I believe, online conference last week, organized by JN Hungary and Papageno in the online space, and there are some very important and useful outcomes.
Rachel, what were the best practices in your country when we take account that choral singing is a community activity, and the people, like communities, want these togetherness and wanted these togetherness, I think, also during the lockdown period. So what did they do? What could ABCD, or how could ABCD support them to sustain this community, and perhaps also a little bit of artwork or singing work during these months?
We were able to get together and talk to the government. It was not very easy, but we lobbied very hard to get research undertaken, scientific research, and in fact the government did underwrite several experiments, and that was really helpful, and they were undertaken by a throat surgeon who's also a professional singer. He's a very clever man. He's a very clever man.
That's an advantage. Yeah.
So he of course he wanted to get back to singing as well, and so he was able to undertake some experiments, and that resulted in some level of singing being allowed. And to begin with, it was just professional singers, and once that scientific research had been further evaluated, they allowed the non-professionals, the amateurs, which is most choirs in the UK. There are very few professional choirs, so it is about the community singing, and then the choral organisations have spent a lot of time putting together the practical side of the guidelines, so to try and enable choirs to go back safely. What the government has done particularly is to make a difference between choirs meeting formally and doing a risk assessment and being a choir that has a committee or people who organise it, and then it becomes a formal activity rather than a social activity. So for social activities in England, we too are limited to either 6 people in one tier or not meeting anybody in another tier, but choirs have still been able to meet under those very restrictive circumstances, provided they've done all the work. And we're not aware of there having been any infection outbreaks coming from choirs or indeed from music organisations at all across the country, which is that's good, and we hope that that'll carry on, and that stands us in good stead to start singing again soon.
Yep. Mihela, what about Slovenia? How could amateur choirs in Slovenia keep up with socializing, maybe in the online space or digitally? So how did it go in Slovenia?
There were several videos made with the Zoom singing and so on, and I must say there were several choirs they did it, but actually this, how to say, excitement about the online presentations did not last very long, because it's fun, you know, when you do it for the first time, for the second time, and then some choirs do it, but then you realize it's not real singing as we need, with the flowing energy, with the being together, and this aspect is missing so much. And this excitement just started to go down after the beginning. I don't think we have so many of these online presentations. They practice by Zoom or any other form because they don't want the choirs to fall apart or to lose the ability to sing. Especially with kids, it's really hard when you try to teach them to sing more than unisono, you know. Yep. It lasts for such a long time that they get this feeling for 2 or 3 voices singing, and this is the most damaging situation for the children's choir. I think it's not so much for community choirs. For children's choirs, it's really damaging, because 1 year without this experience makes a long-lasting damage to the choir, I guess. And that's why teachers are trying everything. They practice voice by voice, or they do the private lessons, or whatever possible, just to keep the choir together, you know. And in regards to the general situation, we don't have the Association of Choirs in Slovenia or conductors. So there's a public institution, which is Public Fund for Cultural Activities, that takes care about amateur arts. And people are more or less not depending, but they are counting on us to give them the guidelines, the rules, which takes a lot of time and energy to read all the research that's going on, to make a paper that it's confirmed by the National Health Institute. And it's also a big responsibility of us what we give them, you know. So these were the 2 things that we were trying to work on giving them instructions how to do it safely in the circumstances that were changing every second week, and them how to keep the singers from going out of the choirs. So these were the most challenging things.
Yep. Gábor, can you tell us about the innovations that are happening in the choral world? The last thing I saw last week was a special device, which I think which was developed, I think, in Germany, which allows somehow to take part in a kind of a digital rehearsal. So is this a way of development in the choral world, in art world these days?
Well, it's very exciting to follow how the digital space boosted during the past, I don't know, it started in March, so it's 7-8 months. And in fact, when we had this online conference last week, it was confirmed by many participants that one of the advantages of this past period, that people got used to these online tools tremendously. So all those people who have not used online tools, they are all using it. But on the other hand, many people ask, how can we rehearse online? And they see these beautiful videos, beautifully edited videos on YouTube that are not results of online rehearsals or online recordings. And everybody asks, okay, how did you do this? How did those people do it who have shared these videos? And of course, it's all offline recording, and it's all edited, and it's not a real rehearsal situation. So we were very happy to learn about Digital Stage, which is a German company who teamed up with the European Choral Association, Europa Cantat, and they are developing an online digital tool that will enable choirs to rehearse. And of course, one might say that once they will be ready, they will start very soon, in a couple of weeks or 1 or 2 months. And when it will be already in function, then the pandemic might be already over. But nothing is too late, because it will save a lot of choirs and a lot of singing activity with a quite good real-time, very small delay, almost unremarkable delay in choral rehearsing and recording. But there will be a great advantage even afterwards, that all those people who cannot participate in choral rehearsals because they are locked, because they are too old, because they are unsafe, or they are not healthy, they can join the community, they can follow the rehearsals, they can sing along at home with a muted microphone, so they can still join. What is very important, that through this technological development, the delay between the sender and the receiver is decreased tremendously. And of course, as we go on with time, we have heard a lot about 5G, which is questioned by many people. And of course, there is a big political background noise behind 5G. But I think this is the direction, that through these special online broadcasting technologies, the delay will be much, much smaller. So something is coming. It's very exciting. And of course, we will share through the international networks and our communication channels once it's available for everybody. It will be available mostly for networks, for organizations who are members of the European network. But of course, with a small prescription or registration fee, everybody will have the access to this technology. So stay tuned, it's coming.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious about what do our two choral conductor guests think about digitalization, these fast development of digital side of choral singing. Is it something that has come to stay with us, or it's just something for this pandemic time, and afterwards it's like something to get over on? What do you think about it, Rachel?
I think it is here to stay. Certainly in the medium term, as Gábor says, there are so many people who will feel unsafe for a long time to come, I think, and a lot of choirs are finding that some people are happy to come back to live rehearsing, other people aren't, and so you have to try and keep people involved. People don't want their choirs to disappear, so this is the problem that we all face, is how to keep choirs going. But also I think people have learned lots of new skills, lots of new technical skills, and to have a way to rehearse live, almost live, but digitally, I think people will really appreciate, and it can be used in so many different ways. I mean, possibly people in care homes, for example, who are missing out on so much singing, certainly in this country, and I'm sure elsewhere, that there are so many applications that could be used, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mihela, how do you see this this development of this digitalization in the choral world?
I agree with Rachel for all the circumstances that people have, and would appreciate to use these new technologies to be a part of the choral world or choir activities. But I also think what we learned really a lot during these pandemic times and new technologies look to be such a promise, and so many things can be done and developed in a very short time to make it easier for everybody to participate from couch, you know. But what we learn now is that we don't want couch. We want to go to a concert, and we renew, I think, our needs, because before, when we were not restricted, we had access to everything. We could go for a concert, we could go for rehearsal, and we took it for granted. And now we realized how important it is to go to a live concert, to go to rehearsal, and I think this is also a very valuable lesson that we learned in this time.
Yeah, that's interesting. Personally, here in Hungary meet a lot of skeptical views coming from choral directors or choir leaders who think that this digital thing, this new unknown thing, somehow kills the spirit of amateur choral singing. What do you think about it? Is it really a threat, or we are just too much afraid of it? Rachel?
I think here the opinion is very divided as well, but I think we have to see it not as a threat. It has helped choirs keep going for the last eight months, and yes, in the UK we all started very enthusiastically, and people have got fed up of it, as they have with everything else. I guess everybody is fed up, but it has helped choirs, and I think most conductors see that value, even if they don't like it, that they see that it has had some value, and that we have to use it for good in the longer term.
Gábor, do you also meet these skeptical views, or what do you feel about it as a previous amateur choir member yourself?
Yes, I think I see huge opportunities in this situation. At least, as Mihela said, people start valuing choral singing much more. And I think we have a huge responsibility that we have to convey this message to the society, that choral singing and this community activity that we are so preciously valuing ourselves, it is something that carries forward the positive feelings in the society. And I think what I was thinking about while listening to you is that what was the situation, what could have been the situation like 5 or 10 years ago, when these online tools were not that much developed? What could have we done without multi-participant online meeting places when we were in a lockdown? And now I think the digital tools, beyond all these tricky technical facilities that could have recorded choral singing or could have been used for choral rehearsing, I think just to keep the community together, that people could see each other's faces, they could listen to each other's voices. Anybody who was isolated in a quarantine, should they have been ill or under threat, or they had a complete lockdown in their country, they could meet each other, they could hear each other's voices. So I think there is a society impact on this, that people started to feel our belongingness a little bit better, that we are exposed to threats, we are exposed to risks, but we are available to each other. And the more we are in touch, and I think the choral singing is one of the best examples that people belong together, they can count on each other, and we have to find a ways to radiate, to convey this message to the society. I think the society is still a little bit unmatured to understand how fantastic choral singing is. And I think it's our never-ending mission to convince people and decision makers that choral singing is something that have to be kept alive and supported, because it is so good to keep the society healthy.
Yeah, Mihela, what do you have to add?
I was not asked, but I would just like to give you one very personal experience about the tickets to get into a concert. We had a plan, to do the national competition in Maribor this year because it's 50th anniversary, and it's such an important place for all the singers in Slovenia. I was like those conductors as an organizer some years before, because people were saying, but why don't you do streaming? Why do we all need to go to Maribor and so on? We could watch from home. I said, that's why I don't want the streaming, because I would like you to be there to participate and so on. But now we were getting ready to do Maribor national competition in June. And we did not know what the situation will be, and that it will be really strict rules and a low number of tickets that we could sell. And people would say, Mihela, you should put these tickets on auction for people for, how do you say, bidding?
Bidding, yeah.
Bidding who is ready to offer more money for a single ticket for such an event, So it's a tremendous change of a view of that you want to be there. You really want to be there, and you're ready to offer more than others just to get in. So it's such a big difference.
Speaking about changes, Mihela, you will organize Europa Cantat next year in July in Ljubljana. Yeah. What has changed? I mean, what did you have to make changes in the organization, in the schedule? I know that at least 6 choirs will go to Ljubljana next year from Hungary, and a few thousand of speakers. Singers are expected. So what can they expect from the organization, from the program, from the festival next year?
We are organizing an event that is right now the most impossible thing to do. It contains singing, it contains people from all over the world, and big numbers in indoor concert halls as well, outside, of course. In the situations that we don't know what will be allowed in 2 weeks, in 1 week, in 2 months, in half a year. So it's I think it's the nightmare for any organizer, And then we decided we go on as planned as far as possible, because we need to be ready for 3 concepts, basically. The one that it will be like it is planned. The one with minimized number, but then we will adapt because we don't know what the reaction of people will be. And then the event is also in the frame of Slovenian presidency of European Union, so it means 6 months. And if nothing else, we decided we will keep at least part of the festival and do it month by month with online events, so people can participate, and we can use this additional time. That situation will probably get better, So it's act as it will be tomorrow, but react also with different scenarios. What was important for us is that we make the registration easy for people to decide. So we try to make best possible participation rules. So if you apply now, and we have to cancel everything in spring, you don't lose anything but 20 euros per person. And I think it's good risk management planning. So we want everybody to be free to apply now without fear. And then in spring, we see what happens and what we are allowed to do and what the travel agencies will be ready to do and the hotels will be ready to do. And I think in spring, when we have to make a final decision, lots of things will be much more clear than now. So I think it was important to make a first step really welcoming for everybody, and I hope we managed with it.
Mm-hmm. My question for our other 2 guests are almost the same. What do you think this pandemic will change, or how would it change the way we organize events, organize international events, or organize national events in your countries? Rachel?
I think people are starting to look ahead. I think that the vaccine news is helping people look positively. But I think, again, going back to the digital side, people are looking at holding live events and using the digital side of things as well. And I think that's certainly something that we'll be looking into is having live streaming alongside live events, and I think a lot of people will have learnt from this year and be using that, and hopefully slowly returning to live events. It's really good to hear that Europa Cantat is hopefully going to happen, and we're being really positive about it. I think we have to be positive and plan that live music will return.
What is your message for the Hungarian choirs? A short message for choirs trying to sustain their spirit, trying to carry on in these difficult times. What's your message for them? And this is our last round. Rachel?
My message is to stay positive, sing safely. It is possible to sing, and we're all in this together. It's lovely to talk to people in other nations. We quite often feel we're on our own, I think, and we're not. We're all in this, but it is possible to sing, and it will happen.
Mm-hmm. Mihela?
No, we are all in this together, and no pandemic is eternal with these consequences, so it will pass. We just need to survive until then and find solutions how we keep singing and until the time that we can do it as we did it before, with all the positive aspects of live singing together.
Mm-hmm. Gábor?
I think my message is not only to Hungarian choirs, but to all choirs, is just to keep your community and your social network alive. And if the human connections between people can be preserved and even the love among each other grows, I think we can face to an even better time once the pandemic will be over.